Hey, good morning, everybody. Law and Legitimacy, Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. The second week of the Law and Legitimacy Fantasy Football League has come to a conclusion, and of course, Mike and I are undefeated. But we didn't rig the event. This is not the 2020 election. We are not members of the Democratic National Committee. I didn't rely on any absentee ballots. I just got a little lucky this week.
Yeah, those points don't vote for themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, who wears short shorts?
I don't know. Who wears short shorts?
Senator Lurch in Pennsylvania. What's this Chuck Schumer is going to have? We're not going to have a dress code on the Senate floor anymore. Is this so Lurch can appear on the floor in a hoodie and his gym shorts?
I feel surprisingly strong about this one.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that this morning. Tell me why.
So I guess here's the story here from Axios is such that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who, if you're listening to this stream and this podcast, I assume you know who Senator Chuck Schumer is.
Well, he's the Senate Majority Leader. Let me tell a quick Schumer story. When I was trapped in D.C., circling the drain of the swamp in the Proud Boys trial for infinity. No, never mind. A mere 4 months. I was at a local pub near the train station having a sandwich one night, and all of a sudden the crowd went electric, and I hear this voice, and it's Chuck Schumer, and I turn around, and of course all the women are saying hi to him because he's got power. But what I didn't realize is New York's senator is about 5'6" or 5'8". So, it took a little bit of his senatorial esteem away when I realized that he was a short dude. But he's a short dude with a big attitude and a lot of power. As Senate Majority Leader, he has the ability to control the agenda in the Senate. And what's more, he has the ability to give instructions to the Sergeant at Arms. Each house of each chamber of the legislature has its own Sergeant at Arms. And this is the person who is responsible for enforcing the rules, as it were. And so Schumer has directed his Sergeant at Arms that the dress code is going to be relaxed. What's up with that?
So the main picture on this Axios story, and before I go further, what is the line that the millennials now refer to? You can go to school, but you can't buy swag. And I think knowing that Chuck Schumer is so short, he's got little man syndrome, I would think that he would want to maintain some sort of formal dress code policy just so he could, add an inch or two through his dress shoe heels. But I guess that when you have that kind of power, you've just kind of given up on all appearances. But the picture on the Axios story is obviously one John Fetterman wearing basketball shorts and a hoodie. And I want to be very clear about where I stand on this. This is not a class issue, economically speaking. To relax the dress code, because I assume that something like this is designed to, number one, to cater to the lowest common denominator, which at this point is Senator Fetterman. Not only is he an idiot, but he is also very poorly dressed. And that's just the facts. He is both incompetent as a leader, and he is also very poorly dressed. And the image that our elected politicians send to us as citizens and constituents is incredibly important. There is an aspirational quality to fashion, Norm. There is a reason that there is a hierarchical structure within society across the boundaries of merit, athleticism, intelligence, and overall accomplishment. And what I wonder within all of this is, what is the motive really in ditching a dress code for elected members of Congress to convene to do official duty on behalf of the American people? And what signal that is actually sending symbolically to all of us as citizens?
Put another way, decorum matters. I mean, we want to say that the people's business gets done, and that there is something, if not sacrosanct, something important about the will of the people. And so in the various houses of the Senate, or of the legislature, the Senate and the House, There are rules that govern how business gets done, how people get addressed, when a person can speak, when a person has to stop speaking. And you suspend those rules and business doesn't get done. One of the rules has been how it was decorum. And presumably it was to show or respect to the public at large, and to show that when the people's business get done, it may be a sausage factory, but we don't want to have people with bloody aprons on the floor of the House or Senate. And we want to create the fiction that somehow law is a dignified matter, and that it comes about as a result of, if not sacred, at least sacrosanct traditions. We want the focus to be on the product, the rule of law, rather than those who produce it rather. And decorum imports or imposes minimum standards, so that we are focused not on the outliers and how they dress, but on the consensus product of the chambers. That is the law that all of us are obliged to agree to. I just can't see the sense in relaxing the decorum standard. I mean, certainly Fetterman has no medical reason to appear on the Senate floor dressed like he just walked off the gym. And I think, Mike, when I heard you say you had concerns about it, it was the relaxation of standards at the margin that concerned me, because now we've relaxed them at the margin. What next? Where instead of saying, my friend from Pennsylvania, are people going to address the chamber by saying, "Yo, what up, MF?" And is that tradition going to fall as well? And it's at what point do the loss of these traditions betoken or suggest a loss of respect for the institution as a whole?
Let me ask you this, Norm. Would you favor law enforcement being able to wear plain clothes, on-duty law enforcement being able to wear plain clothes in the execution of its duty to the public? Because we talked about this with respect to the issue out of Memphis, Tennessee, with the undercover units and that really weird sort of almost like guerrilla style policing effort. The unmarked cars, the BDUs and vests, no signal to people that they were law enforcement, and the way that they went about their business. I know I'm drawing sort of a hyperbolic comparison here, but my problem is multifold as I talk more about it. Number one, we should aspire for more as Americans, and those that we elect to do the business of the people should also hold themselves to a standard higher than the common man. And that includes their appearance. That includes their aspiration to look their best in the execution of their duties. Now, there is a very popular political commentator who we share viewers with, very few though, because this guy has millions. He goes by the name of Tim Pool. His position is that there shouldn't be a dress code, but this is obviously coming from somebody who's probably never had a tailored suit in his life and wears a beanie every day, right?
Well, also in West Virginia, I mean, you got to forgive him that. He probably thinks that this is the kind of guy, Pool, when he goes into a restaurant and he sees a spittoon, he asks what's the cereal that is in it. He's in West Virginia.
Well, but more than that, I think it's an indication that he has found his foothold and his success without having to abide the standards that traditionally define the institutions of our country, which, to agree that there shouldn't be a dress code, to me, and to fall in line with someone like Senator Chuck Schumer, who is deferring to the lowest common denominator, and someone like hoodie-wearing Fetterman. Now, don't get me wrong, I wear a hoodie on this show. But I'm not an elected member of Congress. I wasn't a lieutenant governor. I'm not an elected member of Congress.
But you're more important. You are the voice of the people. You should at least wear button-down collars, and maybe I should button mine down. No, but I don't want to minimize your point. I think it is. I think it is surprising, and I can't imagine what Schumer's justification for it is. As to police officers in the uniform is part of their command presence. And it's how we help distinguish a police officer.
It's how they gain legitimacy with the public, Norm. It's how they identify themselves as a member of the state, which has a monopoly on the enforcement of the laws of our country, right? State, local, federal. And I think more than that, going to the Tim Pool comparison to this stuff, it's, there's some sort of economic barrier to how many suits a senator must have to, fulfill his or her duties on the Senate floor. And I'm just thinking about the cheapening of fabrics and how cheap it is to assemble a suit for purposes of executing one's duties in Congress. I mean, it just, I understand the wanting to look like the common man or to find common ground. But the notion that someone would show up with grease still on their hands from, coming from underneath a car hood or whatever on their work clothes from doing, their plumbing duties or what have you, that is ridiculous. That would also be an affront to the institution itself, right? I understand there's some sort of Hollywood sort of patina that people love to see, Barack Obama drinking a beer with somebody makes them feel like relatable. But that's not what we're after. And that's not the expectation that young people should have of its institutions or those that are there elected to execute and perform on their behalf. We want them to do more.
Let's see what happens next. Maybe they'll vote for Fetterman as speaker and he'll just get up there. Yeah, I ain't going to use the gavel. Hey, what up, everybody? I'm John Fetterman. And then he'll belch, grab a beer and say, let's talk. Let's talk. Hey, NFL, lots going on there. The NFL has filed a grievance against the Players Association. Why?
So earlier in the summer, I think this was late July, there was we'll call it a video conference, a Zoom conference organized by one of the NFL's most visible running backs, Austin Ekeler. He is the running back for the Los Angeles Chargers. And he organized a video conference with other elite running backs, the likes of Christian McCaffrey, who we know from Stanford success and then drafted by the Panthers and most recently traded to San Francisco. From a fantasy football perspective, the clear number one option in all of fantasy football, Christian McCaffrey. Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, who last night destroyed his knee on Monday Night Football, I guess ironically or unironically. In conjunction with this story, you and I have also talked about one Jonathan Taylor on this stream multiple times before, and his negotiation issues with.
So what are the NFL? What's the grievance about, though?
The grievance, it asserts that the NFL Players Association has advised and is advising its constituent running back members to exaggerate injuries and to do anything necessary to better their leverage points in negotiation, right? To minimize their ability to perform under the good faith contract standards that are at the heart of the collective bargaining agreement. And so what the NFL has done in conjunction with the knowledge that this video exists, right? So I'll put this on the screen from Outkick. Outkick is run by Clay Travis. And they reported on this. You can see the date on the screen, July 23rd, 2023. And it says, NFL running backs are tired of being undervalued, so Austin Ekeler got them all together to address the ongoing contract issues. And then here's where it gets interesting. Although the details of what was discussed have yet to leak, the conference call on Saturday included all of the NFL's top running backs and a few representatives from the NFLPA. Norm, that's the big issue here, is that it is reported, it is public knowledge through reporting that the NFL Players Association had a presence on this private video call with the league's top-rated and elite running backs who are conspiring to discuss how they can better their leverage in negotiations under the collective bargaining agreement.
Certainly, if
that is undervalued.
No, and I presume I've never reviewed an NFL player's contract, but all contracts are under a contract is an agreement that the law will enforce. Or put another way, it's a meeting of the minds where things are exchanged. The parties alter their positions, and parties agree to perform certain things. I agree to play as a running back for your team. You agree to pay me and provide me with certain things, perquisites. The contract, left unstated in the contract, is an implied warranty of good faith and fair dealing. I mean, I think the owner of the team who is paying me to play is assuming that I will make my best efforts to succeed. And certainly within the contract itself, there may be incentives. If I have a 100-yard gain in a game, I may qualify for a bonus. If I score a certain number of touchdowns, I may get a bonus. If the team makes it to the playoffs or the Super Bowl, I'll get a bonus. But underscoring all of that is an unstated premise that I will bargain and perform in good faith for the team. How is it that that overstating injuries is going to benefit an NFL player in contract negotiations?
So what I've put on the screen, I think, is going to answer your question. I'm going to quote from the Washington Post article, which is the publication that sort of, quote unquote, broke this as a story of the grievance. Quote, the memo continues, we have become aware of a formal Zoom hosted by the NFLPA with certain NFL running backs in which this advice was conveyed. The conduct is a clear violation of the union's agreement to use, quote, best efforts to faithfully carry out the terms and conditions of the collective bargaining agreement and to see that the terms and conditions of all NFL player contracts are carried out in full by players, end quote. The union's conduct is also reckless, as any player that chooses to follow this advice and improperly withhold services under his player contract will be subject to discipline and financial liability under the collective bargaining agreement, club rules, and or the player's contract.
That still doesn't answer my question. How does overstating my shoulder twitch, saying I can't play today, how does that benefit me in negotiations?
Well, ostensibly, we're talking about a class of players that are the highest performing, most valuable assets on a team's roster.
With a short shelf life in terms of their career because of
correct.
Yeah.
And so the gamble that they are making when they do things like this, many have speculated that Jonathan Taylor has overplayed his ankle surgery from the off season, and it's carried into this season. He's carried that into this season sort of as a crutch. We've seen him sort of limping in plain clothes on the sidelines during training camp. He's on the physically unable to perform list for the first 4 weeks of the season. We've seen this kind of stuff happen. So yes, short shelf life, but the advantage is that they are depriving their team of the benefit of their play and productivity on the field in exchange for their personal ability to negotiate higher margins in their contracts. That's
I give a guy who's injury prone a higher margin? Why wouldn't I just say, hey, yeah, okay, I see you've got a bad shoulder, you're going to get less?
That's exactly what the NFL has done to date. The NFL has no problem paying in large measure positions like quarterback, defensive line, defensive backs, offensive linemen, wide receivers. There is one position on the field that has, over the years, in cumulative effort, failed to do two things: to communicate value back to the organization that is not easily replaceable with the next guy coming in the draft or someone through undrafted free agency or whatever, and two, that they can come back from injury and perform at or above a level that they were beforehand. It is extraordinarily rare that you have Adrian Petersons and Jamal Charles, those kind of players that are able to come back from catastrophic injuries and perform at elite sort of Hall of Fame levels. And for that reason, the NFL just says, ultimately, this is what your players association has negotiated as your rookie terms as a first round rookie or a second round rookie or a third round rookie. These are the tiered levels. Your players association, your union, has collectively bargained for your value. And why are we to take your individual argument to the contrary when you have had every benefit of that collective bargaining agreement, except and until you want to be paid more proportionally to your counterparts?
It seems to me that the owners have the better argument here. I mean, I'm sympathetic to the running backs, and if they are undervalued, that's an issue they should take up with the union. But I mean, it seems to me that if the owners bargained in good faith with the union and these salary tiers were set up and they don't benefit the running backs because the running backs are in and out of the NFL so quickly, 3 to 5 years typically, their real beef ought to be with the Players Association.
Well, and I've long said that.
What remedy does management have here?
Well, management has this remedy. So not only are the contracts dictated by the collective bargaining agreement, but so is discipline and remedy for breaches, potential or alleged breaches of contract. And so what they've done is they have filed a grievance with an arbitrator. The arbitrator is going to take the facts as they are alleged. That arbitrator is going to hear from both sides. The arbitrator is going to render a ruling, and depending on where the sides come to, based on what is shown and what potential damages the NFL is entitled to based on the arbitrator's decision, if any, the NFL could simply appeal that decision through the mainstream court system, and so could the NFLPA. But this is another one of those callbacks to that government underwritten monopoly that the National Football League has on professional football.
Well,
Right.
it's an interesting story. I'm glad you brought it to our attention. You know, the economics of this sport are not often commented upon. And let's keep an eye on this lawsuit. I think you've certainly opened my eyes to the bargaining position that running backs are in and the difficulties that they face, as well as, all these NFL players. I mean, they come out of college having led a fantasy life. The better ones, obviously, having been recruited at a young age, wined and dined and treated well through college and offered multi-million-dollar contracts to play a sport when they're still 22, 23 years old. And I think many of them make the mistake of thinking, wow, this is what adulthood is. What they don't realize is that adulthood is going to be over by the time they're in their 30s, and then reality is going to set in, and they're going to have to do what the rest of us do, and that is hustle to make a living.
Yeah, and Dawn says, seems like a catch-22 for running backs. I don't want anybody to think that I am not sympathetic to the position. I certainly am, but I'm also a grown up. And the NFL is a grown man's profession. It is a business. And every single successful person that has matriculated through the league will also say the same thing in public, that it is a grown man's business. It is a profession. And to the extent one has the ability to forecast his role on a team, whether it is on the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, appreciate the risk that one is subjecting his body to, play in, play out, what the shelf life is. There is adequate data out there to say, hey, do I want to play at the next level? It's a short-term career pathway, because by the time any of these players retire, the extremes of this stuff are the offensive linemen and quarterbacks who can play into their late 30s and early 40s. That's not uncommon. But someone like Tom Brady playing at 44 or 45 years old is certainly uncommon, but that is still a very young threshold to enter some sort of post-career retirement era, right? And so part of the problem here is that running backs for 2 or 3 years on average of productive work on behalf of a franchise expect that they are going to be taken care of, not just at a point that will set them up for life, but that they compete sort of at an elite level financially forever. And that's just not a realistic expectation. There's no way that the NFL persists as an institution if it just is frivolous with the allocation of its money. Look at Norm.
I've got Mark Cuban on the phone here. He wants to weigh in on this, but he wants to know, Mike, are you vaccinated? Because Mark Cuban is the owner of the Mavericks in the NBA, and obviously a billionaire and whatnot. Hi, Mr. Cuban. Thank you so much for calling in on Law and Legitimacy. Mike Boyer. It was his idea to do all this. He's a great guy. He's very knowledgeable about sports. Can I put you on speaker? Well, I got to ask Mike a question, Mark. What? Are you serious?
Hey, show him. Can you show him this picture?
Mike, are you vaccinated?
Tell Mark this is my picture that I've got on the screen. This is me.
He can't. He's calling in now. Mike says he's not vaccinated. Mark, are you there? He hung up on me. What's up with Mark Cuban and vaccination and interviews?
Well, here's the thing. He apparently back in 2021 exchanged direct messages, I believe on Instagram, with none other than Leia, Halpern, who I have a picture of here on the screen. And I was surprised because the story that I'm referencing here with respect to Mark Cuban is from the dossier by Jordan Schachel. And the headline is text. Mark Cuban discriminated against unvaxxed journalists, said he wouldn't do interviews until they took shots, and promoted vax on shows. And so there are some of these text messages here, and we can pull some up on the screen. But here's one from late August 2021 from Mark. When you get vaccinated and tell others to do the same, I will come on, referring to the show. To which she replies, no problem. That's fair enough. You're entitled to your view. However, you're more than welcome to come on my show and tell me why I should get vaccinated and tell others to do the same. And I will challenge and debate you on this. I think this will be very interesting, especially since nobody is willing to have an open dialogue on the subject. He says, not my offer. I won't do it if you are not. Your choice. So, and it goes on. There's more to this. And to be clear, this was supposed to be a virtual interview, Norm. So Mark Cuban was declining to go on an interview with Leia unless Leia decided to, one, make a personal medical decision to get vaccinated, and two, also promote or tell other people to do the same. Now, this is perfectly within Mark Cuban's right to do. But it is interesting that Mark Cuban is such a visible character in American society and culture. He has a lot to say about domestic issues that, in civil strife, but he is silent as it gets when it comes to international issues, those particularly aimed at China. And that is because the National Basketball Association has absolutely abdicated any loyalty to the American ideal. And this, you said, well, so why is this relevant? Well, number one, this came out just a day or so ago, number one. And number two, this is yet another example of Mark Cuban's hypocrisy, right? We're talking about a free press, and he is putting some sort of arbitrary, just from a contracts perspective, Norm, hear me out here. If this is a contracts one in law school hypothetical, is there a contract form if Leia agrees to get vaccinated here?
Well, no, he said, if you do that, I will agree. So she hasn't done it. So there's no agreement. If she does it, is he bound to agree? If she says, in reliance on your promise, I got vaccinated, even against my judgment. Now that I've performed, you performed. I think that this one is a little indefinite in its terms, and I'm not sure it is an enforceable.
Well, and then what's the consideration for someone like Mark Cuban, right? So we got offer, acceptance, and what is the consideration in the middle is ultimately what we're talking about. A consideration can be a promise or forbearance, any sort of meaningful bargain for exchange. But the question that I have is whether this is an illusory contract based on the fact that Mark Cuban is receiving no ostensible benefit from the performance of Leia according to his terms, and therefore,
but he gets. I mean, not that he needs access, but he'd get access to her show. What's this about him loving needlepoint?
I tried to avoid using the word vaccine just for the algorithm.
Okay.
I think,
Right.
I think I called it what is it? Safe and effective. So SAE needlepoint is what I called it. Anyway. I think a little more about Leia here, if I can put this on the screen. She debuted this stuff so she's got just shy of 625,000 followers on X. So it's not as if
would she have that many followers if she had a normal blouse on and didn't look like she was dressed for a beach party?
Or she didn't have a book called Undressing Bitcoin, which is also interesting. Look, I'm not here to rag on Leia. I think that this is an important story, irrespective of her appearance. However,
I'm not liking Mark Cuban, and I'm not liking somebody who decides that their cleavage is as important as what they have to say. I mean, this is a little bit suspicious to me.
Well, and this is sort of Bitcoin maximalism, as it were. So Leia is a huge proponent of cryptocurrency, in particular, the brand of cryptocurrency that we recognize as Bitcoin. And I believe that was sort of the intended subject of the interview. And so there is, on both sides here, I think that we have really interesting motive issues. What is Mark Cuban's motive for requiring that someone who describes himself as a freedom maximalist to get vaccinated before he appears on a virtual interview? Likewise, what was Leia's purpose for inquiring with Mark Cuban, who at that point was already known to be a bit of a hypocrite when it came to his pathway to wealth and success versus what he communicates to the larger public? So I think both sides have motive issues here.
A different question, and don't be put off by it, but why do we give rat's hind end about either of these people? I mean, Mark Cuban seems to, obviously he's a billionaire and he owns a sports team, so he can trade that cachet into a broader platform. Leia's easy on the eyes and shows just enough tit to be titillating. But I mean, these aren't people that I would cross the street to listen to on either case on anything other than basketball and halter tops.
Well, so, you are in the minority of people, Norm, that would not listen to either. The stats and the data shows that people listen to each of them in large measure.
To us, clearly, I don't have it going on.
And that is exactly the issue that we raise with bringing this story to bear. All three of the things that we've covered today are more about the decline of American culture within that broader theme of legitimacy of our institutions. And Mark Cuban is one who appears on widely popular shows like Shark Tank and is seen as some sort of business savant, and that everything that comes out of his mouth must therefore be true.
Is he the next Donald Trump? Is he going to be running for office?
He doesn't have it in him. And I say that just with full knowledge that his track record would not allow him to get there. I don't even think that he could win Texas, and he owns the Dallas Mavericks. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about with respect to sort of I guess a hindsight analysis of what our cultural betters were prioritizing just 2 years ago with respect to access to interviews in the press and things like that. I think Mark Cuban probably knew that his appearance on a show with someone like Leia, in the absence of her saying the things that he was requiring, would lead to more issues for him personally within his in-group, within that establishment group. And that's just the hard truth of the matter. So perhaps I'm just counter-arguing my own fact pattern and analysis from a couple of minutes ago, right? You must do this because if you don't and I appear there, I inherit financial and popularity issues. So anyway.
A quick snapshot today of 3 pieces of Americana, folks, that don't tell us much about where we need to go next, but tell us and speak volumes about where we are today. Mark Cuban, I won't talk to you unless you do what I want you to do. Sort of the fascism of wealth. I don't know. So listen, thanks for tuning in today. We'll be back at it tomorrow morning. How do people find us, Mike?
Well, we're live here every day, YouTube Live, on X at LawPod Daily, and we're also on Rumble Video. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Audible, Overcast, etc., wherever you find podcasts. So please rate us 5 stars and leave a positive comment or leave us alone. And I also think tomorrow, Norm, maybe we talk a little more about the F-35 scenario. That's becoming more and more of a curious case. I'll
tell you that was interesting yesterday. So, pilot bails out of the F-35. It can't be found. It's suddenly found. And now the Air Force is grounding flights for a couple of days. When I first heard the story, I wondered what's up. When I heard that update this morning, I began to wonder about systemic sort of issues within the fleet and about the possibility of an espionage-related grounding of the flight. If there are questions in the Air Force's mind about whether these planes are safe to fly right now, why is that? I assumed it had something to do with one pilot or one plane, but the Air Force is apparently raising questions about the integrity of the fleet. Has somebody gotten in the software? What's going on?
And I think I mentioned yesterday something related to remote activation or remote control of that plane, and artificial intelligence is obviously involved in the autopilot simulation that took over. But we also know that from the reporting that there was a wingman with the pilot that ejected. So there were 2 planes, not just one, but there were 2 planes. And curiously enough, we have no accounts from the wingman why the plane was left to its own devices, why that pilot did not follow the plane and report back about what was going on, where it was going. And perhaps he did, first and foremost, and we don't have that part of the story. But to your point, Norm, I think that as more came out during the day, I changed my view from, this is perhaps an exercise in the strength of our aviation to show the rest of the world that one of our stealth planes might be over your skies right now, and we don't know. That could still be the case, but also something that could be the case is some sort of remote activation or entry through a foreign government or operation.
That's where my thoughts tended. I mean, I keep waiting for signs of broader electronic warfare to show in the United States, the crippling of the infrastructure, for example, disabling of financial transactions, or a spot issue with a fighter plane. Let's see. We'll talk. We'll keep an eye on this. We'll report more as we learn more. Thanks.
Shout out to Dawn for the highest point total this week in ball and legitimacy. SWAT team with over 150 points.
That is pretty impressive.
I'm in the rear view. Anyway, we're 2-0, baby. We will see everybody tomorrow. Like I said, 8 a.m. Eastern every weekday. Follow us on X at LawPod Daily. Norm, you've got a little bit of free time here today. You're not in Manhattan, so
my Manhattan case pled yesterday. I was disappointed. Among the pleas, the young man who defaced a George Floyd statue got pled guilty to criminal mischief. How many people who tore down Christopher Columbus statues got similar charges? Just like inquiring minds want to know.
Rhetorical questions abound. All right, Norm, have a good day. I will see you tomorrow morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We will see you at 8 a.m. bright and early.